Welcome, YouTubers. My name is James. This is Angie. We're recent full-time RVers. We became full-time RVers December, I'm going to call it December of 2017. She'll correct me every time. That's okay, though. Yeah, I actually got notes, too, believe it or not, to go by, but here's our goal. There are so many people out there right now that have a desire to become full-time RVers, and we were one of them probably for the past 4 years, but ultimately in the progression of making a decision, here we are now. I'm going to call it 2015, 2016, we actually had a goal, a desire I should say, of starting to get into a tiny house, consolidate everything down, get everything where you bare necessities, that way you can consolidate your life, save on bills, smaller spaces and all that. Our learning curve is what this video is about. The learning curve with the tiny house concept was found that tiny houses are great, they're cute, but at the same time, they are not designed to travel with, not repetitive, move it from point A to point B. They're mainly meant to comply with certain legislature that allows you to park on certain properties. They're also structurally not built to actually be moved regularly. They're made out of wood. Things that we learned, things that we saw, things that we had people tell us about came to a reality. So in the past, I'm going to call it 3 years, we've decided to go from a tiny house, from buying a piece of property, putting a tiny house on it as a semi-permanent structure, to the reality of now, we're just going to get an RV. The RV in itself are built very well if you get the right brand. The RV in itself allows us to move like we want to do. And quite honestly get from the experiences I've had from running from one coast to the other coast and stopping here, stopping there, being able to now go behind and actually explore it and see what it actually has to offer to people that really in our past have been through it just to get through it. The process to get to where we're at right now, which is currently outside of Nashville at a snow-burdened campground, go like this. In October of 2017, we decided to sell our home and make the move to a tiny house. We had a very drawn-out plan of what we were going to do, so we kind of knew how to choreograph the sale of our house to make it work better for us in the moving process. We sold our home in November of 2017, the end of November, technically December 1st, and we in the contract arrangement had made arrangements for us to stay on property in our new RV for the month of December. We had planned that mainly so that we can have time to actually move out of the house casually and into the RV without a lot of headache, if you will. We made a very smart choice, and again, that's what this video series is going to be about, the choices that we had to make. Choice number one was simple. Do we stay in the house and do we bring all of our belongings down to the RV and start stocking up in the RV with everything we think we're going to take, or do we go ahead and immediately start living in the RV and finding the things that we need in the RV and bring them down from the house? Very good choice. The choice, and it really allowed us to have the freedom of saying whether this worked or didn't work. In the process of moving everything down to the house, the next thing comes about that we have to actually make decisions on, and that's all the memories that we had in the house. When you're consolidating, it's not an easy task. You're having knickknacks, photos, all of which consume space, a lot of space. We actually had more of a heart-wrenching moment trying to downscale our belongings than any of the other decisions we came across. That one's a big one, and it's going to be something you're going to need to spend some time on. And again, that's one of the benefits of being in the RV right out of the gate and moving from the house down to the RV instead of the other way around. Another tidbit of information is as far as your bills. Good God, make sure you make a note. Some of these places that you have utilities through, bank accounts through, retirement accounts, or any of the things that actually in internet land, a lot of it, to cancel it, you're going to require 2 signatures. So budget your time for both you and your spouse, because more than likely you got 2 signatures required. In our case, it's hilarious because to turn off the electricity in the house at a given date, it required 2 signatures, which was ridiculous. For water, it required 2 signatures to turn it off. Ridiculous. They won't allow you to do it in a mail-in situation. But when you go to your bank, guess what? 1 signature required. Gotta love it. So bear in mind, there are a lot of tidbits involving your home that you're not transferring. You're actually cutting off when you're doing this downscaling process. So just keep that in mind. When we sold the house, again, I told you we had moved into our RV first and started bringing everything down. But we learned a lot just in that first 30 days we were here transferring all that stuff. One of the more important things, well, this is in Nashville, Tennessee, and this is probably one of the colder years that we've had in about 4 years. RVs are designed in 20 amp, 30 amp, or 50 amp service when you connect to shore power. Well, ours is a 50 amp service, but we went ahead and put an adapter onto our system so that we can plug it into our garage for the time that we're still here, but it got really cold. In that time, we went and filled up our propane tanks for heat 3 times just in the 30 days we were here, and that's not really with really cold weather either. What we learned is that space heaters are critical. You've got to have them. But what everybody else in YouTube land doesn't really make a note about, yeah, get a space heater. Well, RVs are not designed for that kind of power being drained off of the house outlets. They're more of a utility kind of access for coffee pots or microwaves or something like that. These space heaters consume a lot of power. Now, I'm not saying everybody is an electrician, but I can say that I had to modify our house wiring in order to allow us to have 2 space heaters in the main area, as well as one other one in our water bay to keep heat on our water pump, freshwater pump. Now, the freshwater pump and all the tubings that are down there, that's obviously important, but one of the more sensitive components down there is that freshwater pump, because think about it. You got the pump and you have the motor. Well, the motor has to stay kind of warm, but the pump is going to have water inside the casing, and it's going to be stagnant at times because the motor is not running. Well, if that water gets cold enough inside and expands and it cracks, you've destroyed your pump. You got to get a brand new one. Well, that's the reason for having the other heater in that water bay. And it's not going to be a huge heater in there. It doesn't have to generate a lot of heat. It just needs to keep it above 32 degrees. So that's a key point right there. You have no choice. If you're going to be in cold weather scenarios, you've got to make that happen. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of money on propane to keep the RV heated. That's the biggest one. I've got a 24-gallon tank on this one, and we probably have to fill it about at 15 just to cover our bases so we have a safety margin. But the heaters in themselves being in the wet area, that's supposed to have some furnace heat going in there as well. It ain't doing it. You have to have a space heater in there. Well, space heater in the water bay, 2 space heaters in the main area, that draws a lot of power. You have no choice but to modify your wiring to accommodate for that power draw. A lot of people have the resources within the RV to modify this or modify that, or they may need to actually put some kind of a tap to the outside to bring more power into the RV to satisfy those. If you don't have space heaters using shore power, you're going to be burning through a lot of propane. Now, we don't plan on being in this kind of weather element a long period of time. Our goal is to get away from it. However, we're still going to have the heating issue that we're going to come across, or cooling, I should say, with our air conditioners as we go down the line. Going back to our timeline and what we've done up to this point, we were at the house. We finished up the house. We moved everything into the RV. We learned our good and our bad and what we should have, we had to make like 4 or 5 septic runs up to the Flying J down the road to dump our tanks. Learning curve. And at the same time, understand that your septic tanks are liquid as well. Yes, I know it's gross, but the valves on those gray and black tanks, they'll actually freeze up too. So bear that in mind. A 4th heater is possibly needed if you're going to stay in this kind of an environment for a long term. So with that said, after we had been there for 30 days, we moved out, gave the keys over to the new owners, and then we moved up to a campground north of Nashville. Bear in mind, I'm going to take 2 steps backwards. We didn't do this half-heartedly with no income coming into our pockets. I still am employed. Angie is currently on a time off, but when we get to our next stage, would be basically a manager of a campground, she will be working again. But in the process, I am still working for a drone company where I fly as a 107 certified pilot, drones, videography, as well as 3D mapping and so on. So I do have a job. And the reason I'm saying all this is because even before we had started, I went to a website. It was called workcampingjobs.com. This was probably in, I want to say, the first part of November of 2017. My wife joked at me saying that I was crazy getting a jump on it that early for the 2018 summer season, but I was by far correct this time. Yay! I put my resume out, and within 2 days, I already had a job offer. Now, the first job offer that I had, I declined because I didn't really like the area. We can be selective. But the second job offer that I had came from Colorado, and Colorado is a place that I've been through and I want to go back again. I want to be there where I can actually explore it a little bit more with my wife. In the years past, I wasn't able to do that. But regardless, there is my employment, and that starts in the middle of April. With that being said, I'm still working right now. Our goal is to leave on March 1st and begin the trek over to Colorado and do a lot of boondocking, campground stays as well, but mostly if we can boondock, but we're learning that too. As far as right now is concerned, again, we're in the middle part of January. Our new hurdle of learning is basically how to cope with really cold, treacherous conditions that we have to make ways of keeping our eyes on the weather forecast in the future, keep track of that, make sure we have supplies and so on, but it's always going to be a learning curve. So keep up with us. We encourage any kind of comments that anybody might want to make. No, by far, we are a learning curve big time. If you have any suggestions or even places in this general area that we might be at that you say might be an interesting place to go visit, maybe some boondocking campgrounds or just overall suggestions, please subscribe and also give us a comment below. Let us know what you might think. As far as things in our relationship that we're going to gain, as far as hurdles that we're going to overcome, I'm going to keep you guys in post on that. We definitely believe that this is a lifestyle that we've wanted for many, many a year. We just now actually pulled on a pair and made it happen. But we're already having a blast. Again, on behalf of Angie and myself, we will be talking to you guys regularly, and look forward to the next posting. Hopefully that'll be a real quick. Hopefully, thank you.